Well, good morning. And what a great morning we've got right now going on in the markets. Absolutely exploding to the upside once again. And that move is incredible based upon a lot of what we've been hearing every single Monday, which is it seems to be the focus on vaccines. And certainly the movement that we've gotten from that each and every week. It's gotten a little bit less. 3 weeks ago, it seemed a little bit more active. We had those huge moves to the upside in the pre market. We never really got to those levels. As a matter of fact, when we got into the regular markets, and we actually sold off late in the day, actually still continuing to hold on to gains, but sold off from 500 points or so from where we had been. And then each week we've gotten a little bit less, a little bit more of a muted reaction, but we're getting some follow through today from yesterday's activity, and that's something that I think really stands out for me right now in terms of what's really going on. And you take a look at the disconnect that we've had, and it's been there for a little while. And certain days it's worked in concert, but most of the time we've had some kind of disconnect. And it seems as if the Dow is definitely outpacing NASDAQ right now. And it's not that the NASDAQ's getting sold off. It's not that we're seeing some of these technology names getting necessarily sold. They're just not participating to the same degree that we are seeing in these big moves, especially energy, financials, all the rest of it. So let's kind of jump right into it. So yesterday, we kind of hovered around a certain level, it seemed like, for about the first 4.5, 5 hours of the trading day. We were up anywhere from 200 to 250 points on the Dow. By the end of the day, we had a nice explosive move to the upside in the final hour to finish up about 327 points. So pretty nice move overall to the upside. We had the industrials. Yeah, they were working once again. Boeing being the leader there once again. And that was about a 5% plus move to the upside. Dow, Caterpillar, Honeywell, all those names definitely contributing to that upside move that we'd seen. It was energy and financials, certainly, definitely with another piece of the puzzle that was moving these markets as well. Chevron's been on fire. Chevron has absolutely been sprinting to the upside, along with a lot of the other integrated names, and especially some of those other next level names in the energy space. We'll jump to that in just a second. But you look over at the financials too, JP Morgan. If you haven't looked in a while, it's nowhere close to that $100 level where it was almost a magnet for a long period of time, just like the XLF had that magnet feel that it had right towards that 25 level. That's way back in the rear view at this point in time. But so JP Morgan, Visa, Goldman Sachs, American Express, all these names contributing. Going in towards the latter part of the day, you had the financials up about 1.5%, maybe a little bit more. Industrials up about 1.5%. Energy on about a 5% move to the upside. And that was that explosive move that we were talking about. We were talking also about the price of crude and moving up towards that 43 level. And I tell you what, as we went into the final couple hours of the day, we had already had 6 unusual option activities in the energy patch itself. By the end of the day, call it 10. That's how much activity we are seeing right now across the energy space, and in names that you maybe have never heard of. It's not just those big names. It's mostly going after the beta names where you're getting the most bang for your buck in a lot of these different areas. Now, the volatility index hanging right around that 23 level makes some sense. You know, that does seem to be priced just about to perfection right now. We look over at those volumes yesterday. Yep, again, I'm going to mention it, 37 million contracts again. And it just gives you that emphasis on how important this has been and what's really been contributing in terms of the volume. The volumes in the markets themselves have been decent, not great, but decent for sure. Take a look at what's going on in the derivatives world. Absolutely explosive. Yesterday, Apple, going into the final 2 hours, Apple was trading about 1.5 million contracts, finished up close to 2 million contracts. NIO was just under a million. Tesla was just under a million, trading right around that 950,000 level. Both of those two names, about 1.25 million contracts trading in those names as well. So gives you a little sense of what we've been seeing. We've been talking about this EV space for a while now, the electronic vehicle area. Those names across the board are absolutely been on fire, and we've seen volumes coming into those names each and every day, and the movement has certainly paid off very, very rapidly. So as we get a little bit further into what was really pushing markets around yesterday, we finally started to get a little bit of push to the NASDAQ towards the end of the day. It started to get a little bit more of a levitation off of what was sort of going actually even into negative territory at times, but a nice little push to the upside. Tesla really part of that big move along with the semiconductors. And we've been talking about the semiconductors for a long time and how impressive that has been, that run. With very few exceptions, that has been an area that just continues to run to the upside. Even though we are seeing right now technology, the XLK, sort of kind of hitting that little pause button, it's not happening with the SMH. Take a look at some of those names across the board. NXPI, Micron, Applied Materials, all these names, KLAC, Tencor, all those names yesterday up about 3% or more. So a pretty amazing move. And I talked about the explosive move in energy, especially these beta names. How about Occidental, Apache, Diamondback, EOG, Valero, Marathon, Devon, all of these various names, Halliburton, they were up 9% or more yesterday. So when we talk about that participation in those beta names that are really accelerating and really participating, 9% or more move in all of those names that I just mentioned that were moving on yesterday. Financials ended up going up a couple of percent yesterday and started to build towards the end part of the day. And that was really that final push that we got when we were in that 200, 250 point range that actually propelled us back up to close over 327 when you look over at what was going on in the Dow. Now, today, nice follow through today. And it started early. As a matter of fact, early on pre-markets, we were looking at about 300 points to the upside, something like that. You look over at crude, it was starting to move a little bit higher, not just into the 43s, 43.60, started to move towards 44. And right now, actually a nice move, 44.60. We're continuing that move to the upside for crude. And then you took a look over at the volatility index, still trading right around 22. Makes sense. We're getting that big move. We got to push up. We were just up about 400 points on the Dow. So it's not only been holding on to those gains, but building on those gains from the pre-market. And a lot of that really, a lot of folks really contributing some of that, not only to the vaccine, but what's going on behind the scenes with future President Biden and what he's talking about in terms of some of the different areas that people might fill. And Janet Yellen and the position potentially for Treasury Secretary seems to be getting floated out there as something that people seem to be wanting to embrace pretty nicely right now. We are really close to Dow 30,000, not 10,000 anymore, 50, Dow 30,000, an absolutely extraordinary move to the upside that we've been seeing. You know what's not participating again, though? Look over at the NASDAQ. It's up 35 points or so, something like that. Now it's actually jumped up a little bit, but the Dow's up about 1.25%. NASDAQ up less than 0.5% right now. So it's still having that disconnect or that lag that we've had for a while now in that specific space that we talk about. Now, the leadership role it makes total sense. How do I say, well, it seems like vaccines is what really people are focusing right now? Well, just take no look further than look over at the S&P. Take a look at Norwegian Cruise Lines and Carnival Cruise. Those names moving to the upside. Look over at the airline space, American, United, all those names moving to the upside as well. Cruise ships, as I mentioned, but also casinos. How about MGM? Nice, strong, powerful move to the upside. Hotels with Marriott. So you get the idea. We are seeing that vaccine news as it's been breaking day or week after week, and we're going to continue to see more and more of it. You got to figure. But along the way, we are starting to see some of those names start to participate on certain days, and that just shows you exactly where people are focused. So with financials up a couple of percent, you got energy up more than a couple of percent today. It just remains very, very strong. And it seems like when you look over at the financials, it's across the board what's moving in the financial world. It's not just the big banks. It's names like, I'll tell you, one of the names that has been extraordinary throughout has been Morgan Stanley. That has had an absolutely phenomenal move. Capital One, another powerful move today. So Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil. So you've got those integrateds all working pretty strong today. But then Occidental again and Marathon, all those beta names are absolutely exploding to the upside. Just take a look. So yesterday we had the XOP, and that's an area that kind of focuses right on exactly that, those specific beta names. I'm not talking about the services with the OIH. I'm talking about the other part of the oil play. And it gives you a lot of these various names that we talk about day in and day out. Parsley Energy, which you may or may not have heard of, but all of these names have had activity. We've seen unusual option activity that's propelled some of these names and continues to. We see Marathon hitting on a fairly regular basis. Occidental also hitting on a fairly regular basis on the unusual option activity. Since we're talking about unusual, why not jump into it right now? So We talk about the electronic vehicles all the time. And, sometimes we forget about the fact that GM and Ford are moving in that direction. The F 150 will be an electronic vehicle in the very, very near future. So, that might be why we're seeing what we're seeing right now. Now, just a week or so ago, we had GM moving to the upside with some unusual option activity that went out into the future a little bit. Well, this one's going a little bit further into the future here with Ford. So stock was trading about $9.40 earlier on when we saw 15,000 of the June. So you've heard me talk about this on the halftime show on CNBC Fast Money. You've heard me talk about it here on the take for many, many months. And it's been something that's been going on for not even just the last year, probably the last 15, 16, 17 months. Most of the activity that we have been seeing has been extremely short term. And at times, the short term side of it is absolutely ridiculous, where it's days for expiration, or maybe it's this week for expiration, or going out into the real future might be a whole month out, which is not that far in reality. Well, right now we're looking at Ford. They're going out to June, and they're buying the June 11 calls, 15,000 of those for about 55 cents up to about 62 cents for Ford. So we've had GM paper. You hear me talking about Tesla and NIO and all these other various names, all the different EV names coming out of China, which is just an enormous number, actually. But let's not forget about some of these other names that actually are moving into that space. And we are seeing some of the paper that moved into GM not long ago, and now we're seeing it into Ford. So a couple of quick questions, and then we're going to run. I know everybody's getting excited. It's Thanksgiving week. I thought we'd have maybe a busy day yesterday. Maybe we did, 37 million. Let's see if we slow down a little bit today, because as we get a little bit closer to these kinds of weekends, especially obviously with Thanksgiving, we know exactly it's always going to be Thursday closed and everything else. Will we slow down a little bit? Will we see any kind of a pullback? Will we see what kind of option paper? And it's something we're all going to be watching here at Market Rebellion. There's no doubt about that, to see exactly what those levels look like and understand exactly how that's working. You got to understand the mechanics of it. We talk about that all the time in the options world, because theta, time, is something that's very, very important when you're talking about the pricing of these options. So, Pete, what are your thoughts on this name? Okay, there's a couple of names that I'm seeing here that I know pretty well, but I'd rather talk about the names, if we can, where we are seeing directly a lot of unusual option activity, or something that we have maybe talked about a little bit lately. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys as well. It's great to see you out there. We've got some great questions coming in here. I think that the most interesting thing that I'm seeing is we continue to see people talking about Tesla. Tesla, yes. And again, right back to the EV space. You know what? We talked about this yesterday, and I'll continue to talk about this. What makes Tesla a little bit more difficult than maybe a NIO or maybe a Li or some of these other different names in the electronic vehicle area is the fact that where you see where the price is, you see where the implied volatilities are, and you are talking about extreme pricing in terms of the actual cost that it takes to participate. Now, it makes it that much more difficult. And for a lot of us, obviously, it almost prices you out, because it's going to take up so much capital to be able to be involved in certain names. And it's just part of the mechanics of what happens in certain names that we trade on a daily and day in and day out basis. It's oftentimes why, when John and I are looking for unusual option activity that we want to talk about in front of the public in a forums like the Halftime Report or any of our Market Rebellion type conversations, we'll definitely highlight certain names. There's no doubt about it, whether it's Amazon or Netflix or whatever it might be. But we always want to be cognizant of the idea that some of those dollar amount pricing is very difficult for a lot of folks. And so we try to find stuff that everybody has an opportunity to maybe participate in. And so I just want to emphasize that, because yeah, we see those and we participate ourselves in those, but we realize when you're buying a $17 option, that's like buying a $17 stock. I mean, that's a commitment. And obviously from a risk reward perspective, that's a very big commitment, and maybe takes away from some of what you'd be able to do in other aspects of the marketplace if you're trying to allocate your money or your finances into individual trades. So just keep that in mind when you're considering all that. And we try to keep that in mind for all of you as well. It's oftentimes why when you see us, when we are on TV and we're talking about some of these various names, yeah, we'll bring up some of those names, and there's no doubt about it. We need to talk about some of the unusual option activity that we see there. But generally we also have a full understanding that it makes it that much more difficult for the participation aspect. Hey, Pete, is $235 possible for Boeing by January? Certainly it is. The and the option paper that we have seen in Boeing of late has been bullish, 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 so it seems. And they have been kind of moving up, stair step up, kind of like they've been doing in Square, where they started off a little bit lower, they moved up a little bit higher, moving out in time a little bit more, buying a little bit time for a move to the upside. But I wouldn't put it past many of these names with the potential as we start to get into a little bit more comfort zone and the vaccine zone as we get closer to that, because we aren't there yet. We know what's going on with these vaccines. We understand some of the numbers that we've been given, which is phenomenal. That's 90+% efficiency and all the rest of it. I mean, that's phenomenal, but it's not here yet. And it will be here at some point in time, but it's not here yet. The closer we get to that, certainly I think that gets a little bit more of a higher level of excitement for a lot of people as we get a little bit further down. Vale price target, somebody else is asking real quick, and that's the last one, and then I got to run. We have seen option paper come in there frequently, and it's been there, and they've been rolling and rolling and rolling. I was just in there, then I jumped back in there. I don't know that I can give you any kind of a price target, but I will say this: I was looking very closely at a lot of these quote unquote rock stocks, as I like to call them. So, uh, I I love these names. I think there's plenty of more runway for a lot of these names. I think that some of these names have just gotten started. And I'm not necessarily going to give you a prediction of any kind of price target. That's not what I do. But certainly with the options that we've seen there, when they start to double and triple, got to start thinking about the disciplined aspect of it. And I think that that's more how I approach it than having my own personal price targets on some of these names, because sometimes you get so caught up in that and you're waiting, 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 and then suddenly you get the rug pulled out from under you. I think you have to be very realistic of the positions themselves as you're positioning for a lot of these various names. And I will tell you, with Vale and many of these other names, Freeport, every once in a while I've been long the stock in Freeport. It's been a far better trade for me when I've been on the option side of it. And right now I'm being a little bit undisciplined because I've held some calls that have moved deeper and deeper and deeper into the money. So now I'm actually viewing those more as stock. So the potential for me to hedge that rather than taking that position off might be for me to sell some out of the money calls against the now deep in the money calls that I've got. I hope that's not too complex, but if it is, understand the educational level that we talk about each and every day here at the Market Rebellion site. Folks, have a great day of trading. I will see you tomorrow, 9:30 in the morning. Take care.